looks like it's mostly ready. It might be taking a second before I can see any comments. Okay, perfect. Now it looks like we are live and ready to go. So, hi everyone. Happy Wednesday. I am super excited to talk to you today about this topic because I think it is a really important topic. I know we all as therapists, we're starting to understand a little bit more about what therapy intensives are, what they can offer to clients, why we price them the way that we do. So I know we have a really good understanding around therapy intensives, but there are still some questions around, well, what about the client and what questions they have and why would they want to pay for this expensive service when my weekly rate might be cheaper, right? I hear that a lot from therapists. So I'm here to talk you all through it. So for those who are watching the replay, let me know if you are new to the group. Let me know if you have any questions as you're watching this back. I'll make sure everyone gets tagged in the recording. But otherwise, anyone who is here live, feel free to let me know any questions that you have in the chat, and I will get to those as I see them. Sometimes the chat glitches out and I can't see every question that comes through, but please do ask. And then if I haven't answered it, know that I haven't seen it, so just try asking again. So we're here today to talk about how to manage client expectations and goal setting in therapy intensives, both of which are super, super important topics because we want you to feel really confident with what you're offering. We want clients to feel really confident with what they're investing in. So if you are newer to the group, you may not know me yet. My name is Amanda. I'm a licensed psychologist in Oregon. I've been in private practice about 2 years. I've been offering therapy intensives half of that time. I have really loved what intensives have offered me in terms of not just the work flexibility I get to have, but also just the confidence I get with being able to see, I was really limited in the 50-minute model. I didn't feel like I could do my best therapy work. And so even just expanding to 90 minutes and now sometimes 3 to 9 hours, I feel a lot more confident. My clients get to move through their goals much more quickly. So this is super, super exciting stuff. You can definitely do it. There's a little bit of different marketing that people think about doing with intensives because again, it's a different service. Most people know about weekly therapy. They don't typically know about intensive therapy. So this is why, again, we're setting the stage for what exactly is it, what can you expect to accomplish from it, and why is it that clients may want to give this a try. So what I will start by saying is, again, number one, if you're new to the group, if I'm looking over here, it's because I've got some notes pulled up of things that I want to make sure I get through. So number one, to understand your role as the therapist in offering intensives. So again, people are really looking to you as the expert, right? Like, what is an intensive? Why are you offering them? Is this something that I should really do? So to start from the beginning, I want you to think about, why are you offering intensives, right? Why do you structure them the way that you do? Why are they either an added part to your practice? Why are they the thing you're transitioning to, right? Again, like you already have a pretty good understanding around, if I can just take this 45, 50, even 60-minute session and stretch it out, right? Like we could do really good clinical work. We know that. So it's about helping clients to see that that's true. Some people, even think about the name, a therapy intensive or intensive therapy. I've had some people ask, like, is that kind of like scary? Like, what does that mean? Is it going to be really intense? It's like, no. It's basically just an extended therapy session, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily intense. There's going to be some processing, but there's nothing scary about it. But what you are offering people is this accelerated healing, right? So many clients have interest in that. We know that people have been struggling for a really, really long time, especially post 2020 with, it's election year. So I imagine there's going to be stuff coming up for people around that. So we know that people also don't always have the time for therapy, right? Some people say they want to get in weekly or maybe bi-weekly, but then something comes up and they cancel, and now you're seeing someone monthly and they're like, I feel like I'm not getting anything out of therapy. Well, no wonder you don't have time for the traditional weekly model, right? So already there's a number of people who, even just by nature of doing a chunk of therapy at a time, is going to better serve their clinical goals than weekly therapy. We also know that some people just prefer to work that way, but again, don't know that it's an option. People know that people know that weekly 50-minute therapy is a thing, but some people don't like that, right? They take 40 minutes to warm up and then they finally start getting to talk about something. And now it's like, well, we have to end. I've had a lot of people actively watch the clock and say like, well, we've only got like 15 minutes left, so I'm not going to get into that. There are people out there who would prefer to have extended time so that they feel comfortable getting into things. I've had someone tell me before, not just one person, but multiple people I've done intensives with, say like, normally it takes me months, if not years, to get emotional in front of my therapist. But with you, I've known you 2 hours and here I am, I can't stop crying, right? Like some people just prefer to have more time to actually get into the therapeutic space as opposed to feeling like it's rushed. And 45 to 60 minutes can feel rushed, especially for people with complex trauma, for people who just have difficulty opening up to others. Beverly, looking at your question. So yeah, absolutely. Like the word intensive therapy, it doesn't scare off everyone. There are some people who have had reactions to that. So I think you could just call it extended therapy sessions or prolonged sessions, or depending on what it is exactly that you're offering, because some people do 90 minutes, some people do 3 to 4 hours. For people who have done like weekends of a few hours each day, back to back or something like that. Some people have called them retreats, even though, the client may not be going anywhere, especially if it's virtual. But I've seen that work pretty well. I've seen some people refer to it as like a mental health retreat or something like that. But you can definitely play around with the wording. You don't have to call it intensive therapy. I think anyone trained in the Gottman method for couples therapy, they call them marathon sessions. So marathon sessions can be something that you use. Just know that if you don't do Gottman, and if someone's looking for a Gottman marathon session, they might be a little confused. But that's where you're writing on your webpage about, this is what I mean by that. These are the clinical approaches or modalities that I would use. So you can definitely look at different words other than intensive therapy or therapy intensive, or you can even say like an intensive therapy experience or experiential, or I don't know, you could play around with words, whatever it feels like would resonate with your clients, but don't feel too put off by the fact that some people are confused about, does intensive mean scary? So again, there is a lot that you are offering, and there are people out there that are looking for this kind of experience in therapy, to just have more time to dive deep into things. I just did a consultation with a couple yesterday where one of the individuals was like, this is exactly how I prefer to work. Let's just like get in there, rip the Band-Aid off, fix things, get out. So this comes back to the setting expectations and managing goals and things like that. Because yes, that is ultimately what a therapy intensive is. It's an opportunity to get in there, do some deep work, see what healing and, in the couple's case, kind of like restoration and reconnection can happen. But it's not always as easy as you get in there, you rip the Band-Aid off, you fix or heal everything, and then people go about their day. That does happen for some people, right? I've seen some people say, like, my life feels like it's a complete 180. This is like earth-shattering, groundbreaking. This has completely changed my life. That does happen. It's not the case for everyone. We know that everyone's brains are a little bit more complex, and that some people need even more than 3 hours to feel safe going into that type of processing. So that's the first thing that you're going to be talking about on your websites, in any flyers that you're marketing with, on consultation calls. You want to just be really clear around what can the client expect, right? And given what their goals are, what is it that they want to work through? What is it they want to do some processing with? What kind of reconnection in their relationships? You want to give them a sense of a few different things. Number one, normally when I say this kind of stuff, I'm going to lose track, so hopefully I don't. But number one, you want to talk about what's even the time that we have together. Because if someone's saying, for time constraints, for budgetary constraints, whatever it is, I can only do a 3-hour therapy session, but I want to talk about like my core abandonment wounds and how this continues to show up throughout my life, and I'm grieving with this, and I'm lonely. That's where it's really important to be like, absolutely, there is a lot we can get done in 3 hours, right? There's a lot of healing we can do. We can help shift some things around. But, and when it comes to more of these complex, longer term issues, this is where we see, more intensive sessions be more helpful. If I have someone on a consult call where it's pretty clear that there's complex trauma, where there's any kind of attachment trauma, developmental trauma, stuff like that, not just single incident. I had a car accident a year ago. That's very different. If I have someone who presents in the other way, I am very clear with them around there's some really good work we can do, and most people are going to benefit from multiple intensive sessions, because that's the thing, right? An intensive session at the end of the day is just more time for the opportunity to accelerate healing. And that happens for a lot of people. And, right, for people who have more extensive history and concerns and things that are getting in their way, it's the same thing as like, okay, a 3-hour session might be equivalent to like 8 to 10 therapy sessions in a weekly format, but people with complex trauma don't always completely work through everything in that amount of time either. So this is just, you're offering an alternative way to do that work. You are not offering to heal and to fix everything. You're definitely not guaranteeing anything. So let me know if you have questions about kind of that difference, or how you might explain that, or what your worries are about if clients like push back at all. Let me know that in the chat and I'll kind of moderate that. But so ultimately that is what you're doing. You are setting, what are these goals? What's the time that we have? And ultimately, like, what's the big plan here? Because this comes back into, if people are working with you in an adjunct way, like I have a weekly therapist, we've got a great connection, I don't want to leave them, but they're not trained in this modality, so I want to get, absolutely, I will make sure that you get added to the replay. I know that's raining here. Hopefully my Wi-Fi hasn't been spotty. If someone has a weekly therapist and they're just coming to me because their therapist isn't trained in something, our goal setting can look a little bit different and be a little bit more flexible, because they don't have these really big goals typically. It's like, well, I've got this upcoming event that I really need to decrease my anxiety around, or I need to process this one thing so that I feel ready to even go back into weekly therapy. I've had people come to me about that before. So you're talking through what exactly are the goals and what time do you think you would need to kind of work through that. You're only guessing and estimating and using your clinical experience and expertise to answer that, because again, we never know. Sometimes I get a consultation call and I'm like, oh yeah, 6 hours is definitely going to be enough for this. And I learned that the client has a lot of like protective parts of their brain that, make them dissociate when they get to really intense topics. So we never guarantee anything. We say, with the time that we have, here's what we can kind of pay attention to, here's what we can do some work with. It's likely that we can have this amount of progress, but we don't know until we get in there and kind of see. Most clients have not had concerns about that piece of like, what do you mean you can't guarantee me that, this is going to fix all of my stuff? So that's for our own like expectation management too, is that clients aren't always going to expect a quick fix. Some people will. And if you do, that's where you just give that psychoeducation and manage those expectations. But the more that you get a sense of, this is all a therapy intensive is just condensed time to accelerate healing, that also should hopefully lower that kind of pressure off of you of, I have to fix this client. I have to, wipe away all their concerns and make sure they never struggle again, or else like I'm a bad therapist or I don't know what I'm doing. It's not on you, right? Like clients' systems are the way they are for a reason. And so you're managing their expectations. You're also managing your own expectations, right? Again, sometimes these intensives work great. Sometimes people need more intensive sessions. Sometimes people need a weekly therapist and intensive therapy, and maybe they need medications. Some clients have sought ketamine treatment. Point being, intensive therapy is not like, is it silver bullet? Whatever, it's not a quick fix. It's not a magic wand. It can offer that. It can be that for some people. It's not for all people. So you're just talking through what are the goals we have, what's the time that we have, and within that time, what work do we think we can accomplish, right? And again, that's just you sharing. Even if you haven't done an intensive yet, you already have a sense of who you're working with and the clients who are coming to you. So you can still speak to that piece of, well, typically I see clients with these kind of concerns need a little bit more support than maybe with like these goals, right? Like you can still speak to that even if you've never offered a therapy intensive before. So it's the same thing, right? You're just saying when there's more complex concerns, we might need more time. We could probably still do some really good work. When there's maybe like a one single incident, something, it's likely we could make a great deal of progress there, right? You're being kind of like tentative while offering hope, but ultimately just like not offering a guarantee. Again, I have never had anyone come to me and say, I've seen some people think the intensive was going to be different. I just did one over the weekend where the client was like, I feel like I just scheduled this at a poor time because I'm actually feeling a lot better. And so we still met for like 3 hours and we did some work, and they left off the session like, I imagine this is probably more kind of life-changing for some people than it was for me today. And I said, well, number one, we don't know. Part of the processing happens in session. A lot of the processing happens after session. So I don't want you to get discouraged. And we still highlighted what were the takeaways that she had, because she still had really good work, even if she was doing a lot better than from the intake appointment. But even she, right, was like, okay, maybe some people have different experiences, but I didn't see this as, she literally said, I didn't see this as a waste of money, right? Just because it wasn't earth-shattering, groundbreaking, life-changing, something like that. So I've never had a client get upset with me about, well, I thought we were gonna like move all past this. I thought like I was gonna feel so much better. Most of the time people are very understanding of their own processes of like, of course I would need another session, or of course, given where I'm at right now, this didn't feel like a huge shift. So again, I know I've had some therapists ask me questions and concerns about, have you ever gotten negative feedback from a client? No, I have found that clients have been very understanding of the process, very appreciative of the opportunity to work in this way. And again, a lot of this comes back to, if you can set really good expectations around, here's likely what we can get to. I've seen this work really well before for others with similar concerns. Obviously, as you're building up experience, you're speaking to that. As long as you're setting those realistic expectations and helping them set their goals, they might be like disappointed in, oh, I wish I could have done more processing, but they're not going to be disappointed at you, right? Because you laid out what this intensive is and isn't, and what they can expect from it, and on a case-by-case basis, here's how it works for some people, here's how it works for other people. So, any questions that are coming up around that piece of managing your own pressure and expectations, managing clients? Even if you're watching the replay, feel free to comment in the comment section and I will get back to you. But otherwise, I think a lot of the managing expectations starts from your website that you have. So, right, you've heard me talk a lot about having a really good website, having a page all about your intensives on your website, and then having a very, very thorough frequently asked questions section on that page. So I have like questions, and I answered questions about, well, what is the difference between a 1 day and a 2 day or a 3 day? What can I expect to cover in this versus this? So you're sharing that beforehand so that people are already getting that sense of, Okay, yeah, there is a difference in what might be possible. There is no guarantee. So then when people get on a consultation call with you, they're already going to be pretty aware of what's going on. A lot of people, again, have already seen what intensive therapy is, even if they've tried it or not. More people are kind of, I think, becoming more aware of, hey, there's a different style of therapies. Not all people, but some people. And these are usually the people looking for therapy intensive. It's like, oh, I heard of this process and I kind of want to check out and see what it is. So some of the frequently asked questions that I get on consultation calls are around what exactly is it that I can expect? So in part, you're sharing your process for what your intensives look like in terms of an intake. How long is that going to be? What are we covering? What kind of questions am I going to ask you? How will I introduce you to, if you're doing EMDR, what does that look like? Brain spotting, what's that look like? ART, like whatever you are trained in, are you giving them a sense of here are the tools, here's kind of the setup, here's what's going to look like? I like to do that in my intake appointments just so that people, it preserves more time in the processing session for processing as opposed to let me take 15 to 20 minutes to explain kind of the background and the setup. So that can definitely be something you do. So you're saying we're going to have this intake appointment. Here's what we're going to cover there. And then when we get to the processing session, how are we going to get started depending on what kind of therapy you're practicing? Because again, each therapy has its own like protocols or ways that you're conceptualizing different things. So you are just sharing, here's what that looks like, here's what you can expect. And then some people will also ask about how frequently do people do these, because right, weekly therapy, we kind of have a sense of like, well, you're kind of going weekly until you feel better or you want to take a break or something like that. So people will ask, how often are people doing these? And that's where I'm speaking to, number one, I love spreadsheets. So I've got spreadsheets where I'm tracking who's booking how many. So I'll say, well, on average, people book 2 to 3 3-hour intensives and feel like they've made some significant progress. And then either they're done for that period of their life, they're ready to transition to a different format of therapy. I've got some people who will book just kind of the one-off 1 4-hour intensive and then kind of just see where they're at. But it is helpful once you start to offer more where you can speak to those numbers of, on average, here's what people do, here's what I've seen be helpful, here's where I've seen actually this doesn't work for this type of kind of consideration. So just sharing those expectations of someone's not going to be in intensive therapy unless they want to be for long term, right? That doesn't have to be the way that they're working, especially if they're concerned about the financial component. So you're just sharing all those different expectations with them. So I want to leave a few more minutes to see if there are any questions that are coming up. But otherwise, I am really excited to see that there are so many people in the group. And I know Stephanie has her intensives group, but it's so exciting to see you all booking intensives, creating your intensives. I truly, truly think every therapist should offer intensives, right? Whether it's just something you do every now and then, whether that's something that you do solely in your practice, but I think they're a really cool opportunity for you. There are definitely clients out there wanting it, needing it, looking for it. So that's amazing that you all are getting this done. Explaining how my intensives look specifically. Oh, that's a good question. I think I have in this group, I think I literally do have a one called, let me open this up in a separate page because I want to get the name right. But I know I have one that says like structuring your intensives or how to plan for a 90-minute one. So I know I talk about mine more specifically. Yeah, I say like how to treatment plan for a multi-day intensive. That's a video in the guide section. Treatment planning. Ooh, my very first video is how to structure a therapy intensive step by step. So I definitely talk more in there about what I do. But yes, hour by hour for me, it depends so much on who the client is, what we're working on. But usually first hour is kind of setting up, looking at what are we diving into? Some people need a little bit more, even time in an intensive therapy session. They're like, I feel like I just kind of need to talk for 30 minutes so that you get a sense of, how I'm thinking and feeling, and I need to like ease myself into the process. So I think a lot of it is still very fluid and flexible. There is no reason why your intensives have to be super structured unless you follow a therapy approach that says it should be. Like, I know EMDR has different phases. There are super talkers. Yes, they show up in intensives as well. But yeah, different therapy processes have their different protocols that might influence what you're doing hour by hour. But honestly, I mostly am doing brain spotting intensives over EMDR intensives at this point, and brain spotting is just so free flowing that sometimes like we think we know where we're going, and then it goes somewhere totally different. So I don't have much of like hour by hour plans for that. If you do have these super talkers that are coming and just kind of talking and venting through things, right? Like those are opportunities too to either, right, if that's what the client wants, if that's what the client needs, great, then they're still getting it. People have asked, do intensives need to be EMDR or any other kind of like trauma-focused approach? Like, you can have talk therapy intensives. They might be a little more tiring than something that's a little bit more directive, but if that's what the client really wants and really likes, then I think that's great, and they could do that. Being direct with them can also be helpful. It's definitely not coming across as rude. I know I get that too. That's my own like childhood trauma stuff of like, don't interrupt people, it's rude and things like that. But I think it is, a lot of times people are coming into intensive therapy for something different. So sometimes I just remind them of that, of like, I hear you, there's a lot that you want to talk about, you want to feel comfortable diving in. I'm good to sit with that if you are. And I just want to remind you, right, here's these goals that we set. You wanted this to look different. So how can we help that, right? At least like as you're talking and sharing information about things, can we incorporate this therapeutic technique? Or can you share a little bit more about like this specific part of the thing that you want to process if they're still wanting to kind of talk about it? Would you like me to chime in or just hold space? Absolutely. I think that's beautiful, Beverly. Kristen, what typically goes in a workbook? I think I actually haven't made a training on that yet, and I probably should because I get a lot of people asking about that. I only have about a minute or two left for today before I need to sign off, so I can't cover that today, but we'll definitely pose that as a training topic for the next live that I do. I know there are also tons of people in this group who have been doing workbooks. Some people from my coaching group are in this group, so they can probably answer some of those questions as well. Thank you, Beverly. See you next time. But yeah, basically workbooks, number one, what I say is you don't need to have them. They're like a nice to have, but not a need to have. So I don't want you to feel like there's pressure to like, I have to have it. But ultimately you can just think about, are there different assessments that you like clients to take? Are there different resources you like them to have? Like if there's already documents you're sharing with clients pretty consistently, then throw that in a workbook, right? You can do some like before and afters, rating scales, whether it doesn't have to be like GAD or things like that. It can just be, what happened? How were you feeling about yourself beforehand? Now that we've done this processing, how are you feeling after, so that people can literally see that difference instead of just how they feel. So lots of creative things that you can do with a workbook, and you do not have to do it. I have had some clients turn me down and be like, no, thank you, I do not want one. So you get to be flexible with that. Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Glad that you found this group. Hope it's very supportive for you. So again, anyone who's new to the group, do a deep dive into all those recorded trainings that I have. There's tons of information in there. I've answered lots of questions. And if you have any other questions, feel free to just post them on the discussion board. I've got 2 moderators in this group with me who are in my program, and they are lovely. They know what they're doing, so they can also speak to some pieces for you as well. But otherwise, I'm going to sign off for today. I will post a poll probably within the next week for topics for the next training, I'll definitely make sure to put workbooks as one of those options for people to choose from. But otherwise, thank you all for joining live. If you joined live, thank you for taking time out of your day if you're watching this replay, even if you're doing it on 2x speed, because I know I have to do that a lot. But appreciate you all. You're doing great work. I'm super excited for you as you continue to add intensives to your practice. And I will see you around. Have a good Wednesday. Have a good rest of your week. Bye, everyone.